Hey guys, this is Sarah. I just wanted to make a quick video for you today on how to make meat pies. A lot of Australians, when they move to the States, the first thing that they ask for is, where do I get a good meat pie? There are several places here that make them. Some of them are good, some of them are not. And then I always just say, why not make your own? It's so much easier. You can have them when you want them. You don't have to have them shipped out. So really, they take like maybe an hour. But it's super easy, so I'm just going to show you quickly what you need and how to make them. Big thing, puff pastry. You can find this in the frozen aisle at your supermarket. The puff pastry is technically for the top. You're supposed to use shortbread pastry on the bottom, and I used to make my own, and I've never found it in a store here. But I'm really lazy now, and I actually just use the puff pastry on the bottom because nobody else here knows the difference. Pie tins, you can find these at your supermarket. And then, real simple, you can put anything you want in a pie. My personal preference is just regular meat and onion. They sell these handy dandy little 1 pound tubes of meat. I like the lean. Don't get it too lean though, because it turns out really dry. So get something with a little bit of fat. If you're on a super diet, get the dry one, it's fine. And then chop up an onion, maybe some Worcestershire. I actually prefer soy, but I'm out today, so I'm going to use Worcestershire. You need a cup of water. Secret ingredient that no American seems to put in their recipe is the nutmeg. Put some of this in there. And a little bit of flour for thickening the water. And that's about it, and let me just cook it up and I'll show you how I do it. Now, I don't have a very big kitchen in my oven. It's actually pretty small, so I don't have a big fancy place to cook for you, but I still managed to make them in here pretty easy. All you're really going to do is cut your onion, dice it up real fine. If you like it chunkier, make it chunky. If you like it real tiny, make it tiny. My big thing about cooking is do whatever you want. Everyone wants to follow these recipes that make them exact. I think that's kind of boring. Okay, so once you get your onions cut, all you're going to do is heat up a pan, a little bit of olive oil. Forgot that earlier. Olive oil. And you're going to brown your onions for a few minutes. And then we're going to add the meat. And then you're just going to mash it up. I have a real thing about I like my meat to be very mashed. I don't like it chunky. Do it however you want because it's about you. Just while your onions are browning, make sure that you unroll your pastry. Don't try and unroll it when it's still frozen or else you'll crack it. Let it thaw a little, unroll it, get it ready, let it sit out so it's ready to go after your meat's cooked. Once your onion has sauteed and starts to turn a little bit brown, that is when you want to grab your handy dandy tube of beef and weenie. Sorry, one hand. I'm going to drop that in the pot. And then just try to spread it out as best you can and get it to brown. If you have any kind of anger issues or are just mad at the person that you're cooking this for, this is an excellent time to take it out on the food. Just beat away at the meat until it's nice and broken up. It'll look like this to start with, and then eventually it'll turn brown, and you just want to make sure that you keep stirring it as you're going to make sure that it's all cooked through. And then once it gets to the brown stage, we'll add some other stuff. While the meat's browning, this is an excellent time to break out the other thing that every single Australian misses, and that would be the bundy. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't bring this stuff back. I normally bring back several liters at a time, and I walk through customs and they ask me how much I have, and I tell them a shit ton, and they say define shit ton. I tell them about 7 liters, and then they just go, alright, off you go. Okay, this is looking pretty good. So at this point, right now, there's no pink left. The meat's nice and sauteed. If you've got a fattier meat, this is the point that you want to drain the fat off. Now remember, don't drain your fat down the sink. That's awful. Take like an old cup or something, put some paper towels in there, drain it off into that, and throw it in the trash can. And then now, grab your Worcestershire, salt, pepper. If you want to add Guinness, some people like Guinness pie, now's a good time. I've seen recipes with Vegemite, not really my cup of tea, but if that floats your boat, go ahead and do it. If you want mushrooms or anything, now's also a good time because they won't get too cooked. And then mix that in and add, a lot of people like beef stock. I don't have any today, so I'm just going to use water. Add about a cup, and then mix it all in. And then we're going to take another little bit of water and add some flour and make a paste. And then once this is boiling, we'll put it in and it'll thicken it up. A lot of the pies that I found in the States are either too dry, like they have no water in them at all, and they're just like a hamburger inside pastry. And then the other thing people do is they put way too much water and it ends up like a pot pie, which is not what I'm looking for either. If I wanted a pot pie, I could just go and buy one of those at the store. Okay, so meat is bubbling. I'm going to add the flour water mix. You can use corn flour, you can use xanthan gum, you can just use regular flour. Make sure you mix it in water first, because sometimes if you just try and throw it in there, you end up with lumpy shit, and that is no good. But you can see straight away how it's already thickening up, and just stir it around, give it a couple minutes, and it'll turn into, I hate to say it looks like dog food, but that's kind of the consistency that you want. Okay, so it's reached the kind of jelly stage, so we're just going to turn it off and then let that sit for a minute, cool off while we deal with the pastry. So just regular pie tins. If you want to make little tiny party pies, you can get the muffin 6-pack and just use those, or if you want to make a big family pie, just get like the big pie thing. Another word about the pastry. I know all of the purists are going to bitch and moan that I'm using regular puff pastry, but I cannot find short crust here, and I used to make it with the drippings from the fat, but nobody here knows the difference, honestly, and so I just use the puff pastry. Don't, whatever you do, don't buy the pre-made pie pastry things that already come with the dish that are in the frozen section. I tried that once, and in America, pie is not a savory thing. They meant for like apple pie or key lime pie, and so you will end up with a filling that is savory and a crust that is sweet, and it's pretty disgusting. So just go ahead, if you're lazy like me, use the puff pastry underneath. I love anything in puff pastry, so double puff is my happy place. Otherwise, you can make short crust pastry. It's really not that hard. It's just flour, you're dripping some other stuff, you mix it up, and then you roll it out. I don't have a rolling pan in my RV because I just don't think that I need space for that. So you can cheat if you have just like a regular used jar and you want to get rid of the little lines in the pastry, use that. Works like a champ. You don't need a special tool. If you live in a real house and you have room for all of that kind of extra stuff, good for you. Now make sure you use a cutting board when you do this bit, because otherwise you will cut your counter, and husbands tend to not appreciate that. For the bottom you can make it a little bit thinner, and then basically all you're going to do is grab your tin and trace around it for both top and bottom. Probably don't thin it out before you do the bottom one, because you're going to then take this and spread it out a little. Don't spread it too thin or else you'll end up with holes, and nobody likes holes in their pie. And then you're just going to stick it in there. Probably need to make it a little better. That you'll spread it up, kind of like a pizza pie. You will make it bigger, and eventually it'll come out, and it'll come out here. And then just do that for however many tins you manage to buy, or until you run out of pastry. Alright, so I fucked up. It's not going to fit. So take your rolling pin or whatever you have and roll it out just a little bit to make it bigger on the bottom, so it'll actually fit the whole pan. You should be able to get 6 bottoms out of 2 sheets of pastry, but if you don't and you're left with all these little dodgy pieces, you can make a new piece really easy. Just grab a little bit of water from the tap, stick together, and then roll it out a little bit, and then you've got a whole new big piece that you can then use to cut out. And before you Frankenstein the last one together, just remember you'll actually need one of these to cut the tops out as well. So go ahead and cut your tops, get your bottoms in, and then we'll deal with the meat. So at this point I've got 6 tops and bottoms. Some look a little bit better than others. And tops. And you'll have a bunch of leftover pieces. But basically what you're going to do is go find your meat, which is chilled enough that you should be able to handle it, and scoop into each pie, but don't fill them all the way up because they're going to bubble in the oven and you're going to end up with a mess. So fill them about 2/3 full. And if you have any left over, you could use it for making like a shepherd's pie or something. Normally I don't have any left over, and I have to go back and pull a little teaspoon out of each one to make the 6th one full. Because nobody wants to leave the 6th one with the little one. And sure enough, one has not enough. But once you've got them pretty much even, or you know which one you're going to keep for you, make yourself a little egg wash or just some milk. Basically just take an egg, beat it up, or add some milk. And then if you have one of those fancy little brush things, then awesome. I don't, because I gave all that shit away when we moved into an RV. So I washed my hands, and then basically you're just going to put a little bit of the egg wash around the edge, just so when you put the lid on, take it and stick it on to where it was wet. And then if you want to make them super fancy, like at home, take a fork and just go around the edge and press them together, and that'll decorate it, and even more importantly, you're sealing it up. And then once you've got all that done, if you're feeling super fancy, you can take these little pieces of extra puff pastry, just because I love puff pastry, and you can make a little egg wash and put that on there. And then sometimes you see pies that are shiny on top and sometimes they're not. If you want a shiny pie because you like that kind of thing, take your egg wash and brush it all over the top, and that'll give you the nice glaze look. If you want it to look like a floury pie, then just leave it. Okay, once you got your pies put together, and honestly, don't worry about if they're not perfect. Everyone always wants these things to look perfect, but unless you're making them for Pinterest, then who gives a shit? They all taste the same. So make your pie. I've got 6, got 4 that I can put on a tray. They go in about 220 Celsius, which in American is about 420, and they'll go in the oven for about 20 minutes. Generally, once you smell them, they're done, but just keep an eye on them. As soon as they're puffed, they're ready, because everything inside's already cooked, so you don't have to worry about that. So as soon as you're brown enough that you like them, pull them out. RV ovens are small and can be a little tricky. So about the halfway point, about 10 minutes, you probably want to turn them around just to make sure that everything cooks even. It's been 20 minutes. And little puffy, but not quite done yet. Throw them in for another 5. So, it's been, well, a normal oven's like 20-25 minutes. An RV oven, it depends on your oven. My old RV oven, 10 minutes, and things were burnt on the bottom and not cooked on the top. This one actually does a pretty good job, it just takes a lot longer. But, they're doing pretty good. The only problem is it only fits 4 at a time. But, you know, deal with it. Let's see how nice and puffy they are. I probably should have put the glaze on top. But they're all nice and puffy, so they're good, they're ready. So I can pull these off to cool, and I'll put the other 2 back in. So these are the ones that didn't have the glaze. And then this one's real nice and brown because that one had that egg wash kind of more all over it. So if you want this kind of thing, make sure you put the egg wash. Alright, so that is my little video on making meat pies in the States. I hope some of you found this useful. Next time you get together with your Aussie mates, get some rum, make some pies. Next time I'll show you how to make sausage rolls. Bye.